Hey guys, this is my entry for TJ's Lego Room Race a Crest MOC contest. And the contest was about building a new ship for Din Djarin that would fit him, because his ship was destroyed near the end of Season 2, The Mandalorian. And this ship was inspired by the Corellian YT-1300 freighter series, the Imperial Zeta-class heavy cargo shuttle, the Imperial transport, and of course the Razor Crest. I really like these 4 ships, and that's why I decided to combine different features of them into this one ship. I also came up with a backstory to this ship, which I will tell you now. So originally it was built as the experimental B version of the Corellian YT-1300 freighter series, and its purpose was to be used as a military support ship. There were only 3 models built of its kind, which is the reason why this model is so unknown. And the main difference is that it features an overall much stronger armor than the original YT-1300 freighter, which in return makes it also much heavier. The hull has an extension on the bottom and contains space for additional fuel tanks and a corridor, which can be used to transport reinforcement troops. The boarding ramp is located on the front, making it easier for these troops to storm out in a battle. And the ship also has a stronger armament. It carries 3 gun turrets on the top, 2 on the bottom, and it also has a proton torpedo launcher. While using the same hyperdrive system as the YT-1300, this ship uses thrusters instead of a sublight engine. And one of the reasons for this is that the thrusters, being more accessible, could be repaired much easier if they were damaged in a battle. And the second reason is that the thrusters need less space for their engine systems, so there's more room inside the back of the ship. And because of being heavier, the YT-1300B is only able to reach 80% of the speed of the original YT-1300. And now to the story how Din Djarin got this new ship. One of the 3 ships built served on Moff Gideon's cruiser and was used as a support ship for ground attacks. And after the end of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, Din Djarin searched for a new ship on Moff Gideon's cruiser he was currently on, and eventually found the YT-1300B in one of the hangar bays. And he really liked it, especially because it reminded him a bit of the Razor Crest. He then decided to take it as his new ship, and because of its dangerous look, he also decided to call it the Mythosaur, as an allusion to the big and terrifying creatures that his ancestors on Mando once rode. And after he left Moff Gideon's cruiser, he flew back to Navarro to let his new ship be modified and spiced up a bit. To pay for that, he spent the Imperial credits that were still stored in containers in one of the ship's waiting rooms. And the interior of the Mythosaur was changed quite a lot. Originally, it was designed to transport troops and to load as much freight as possible, but now the ship would only be used by 1 person, and Din Djarin wants the ship to be modified to fit him and his purposes more. So he had added sleeping quarters, a bathroom, a kitchen, a living room, an armory, a carbonite freezing chamber, an escape pod, and he had removed the cockpit from the outside and built a new one in the center of the ship. On the outside he had added a retractable radar dish, a crane, a TT-8L unit at the boarding ramp, and 2 big laser cannons on both sides of the bow. While all these changes were being made to his ship, he went on vacation to Sorgan for a few months. And now, after he has settled in his new ship, this is what the Mythosaur looks like. First up, I'm going to show you everything on the outside, and later I want to show you the interior. So, starting off with the front, you can see the headlights here. And moving upwards, there is the front twin laser gun, which has a built-in cooling system, allowing for a high fire rate without overheating. And this gun is very useful against small and fast targets, like starfighters or rockets. Now if you move over here, there's a little cargo storage which can only be accessed from the outside, and there are some spare parts stored in it. Here we got a radar dish which can be extended, and this is actually one of my favorite functions on this ship. If you turn this gear over here, the radar dish will actually rotate in any direction. And Mando is using this for locating enemy ships a long time before they detect him. And when he's getting in a fight, the dish will retract again, so it's more protected. And here you can see some damage caused to the ship by an asteroid. And here 2 panels fell off, and you can see the greebling underneath. And very interesting is that, unlike on the Millennium Falcon, there's almost no greebling on the sides of the ship. And that's because everything is still covered with the original panels, and only parts that need cooling are sticking out. And if you move on, you can unfold an antenna here, which is very important for Mando because this antenna prevents signals being emitted by the bounties he is currently carrying on his ship. And the antenna is emitting signals at the same frequency as the bounties, but offset by half a wavelength so that they interfere with each other and eliminate themselves. And this is why Mando doesn't need to worry all the time that he and his bounties will be tracked by other bounty hunters. And on the other side, the ship got hit by 2 big laser shots that came through the deflector shields. Here you got a retractable crane, and if you unfold it, you have to attach a rope, and then you can open this flap right here. And if Mando wants to unload cargo from his ship, he can lift the cargo out of the freighting room, which is underneath, and then drop it next to his ship. And then the crane can be retracted again. In the middle, there's a very big and well-armored laser gun. It is very precise and can be angled in almost any direction. And this gun is mainly used against heavier armored targets. And I also made sure that all the guns on the Mythosaur are very aerodynamic, because they stick out of the ship and would only slow it down even more. If you move to the side, there is an docking ring which will also open, but this is something I will show you later when the interior is also visible. And next up, there is a heat exhaust vent which is controlling the temperature of the water cooling systems for the hyperdrive. And this is much more effective than the cooling system on the Millennium Falcon, for example. And that's the reason why there is only one heat exhaust vent needed. Here on the back you can see the 2 main thruster engines, which are very powerful. And next to them there are some smaller thrusters which are used to precisely maneuver the ship. Here's another view on the thrusters, and it was really a challenge to get the glowing effect of the thrust looking good. And I'm still not really satisfied with how it turned out, but I did my best. And if we move on, there's the second twin laser gun, which is covering the back, and it's used against pursuing ships, for example. So next up, here is a docking hatch, which can also be opened when you turn this gear over here. And there's also an elevator to access the hatch, but this is something I will show you later. And over here, there's another little exhaust vent. And if you remove the cover over here, there's actually a window underneath, and it's the window of the living room. And this is actually the only window on the whole Mythosaur. So yeah, there's no actual cockpit windscreen, because Din Djarin had a bad experience with windscreens in chapter 10 of the Mandalorian, when a big spider destroyed his windscreen on the Razor Crest, which is a very big disadvantage if you want to fly through space. And that's why Mando decided to remove the cockpit on this ship, which would actually be located here, and build a new one in the center of the ship. Now, if you're wondering how he can see where he's flying, first, he's using sensors that scan everything around him and show him a 3D model of his surroundings. And secondly, in the event that the electronic systems fail, a system of mirrors was integrated into the ship, which shows him an overall picture of his surroundings on a screen in his cockpit. So the devices, you can see here, are representing those mirrors, and they are distributed on the top and on the bottom of the ship. Now we are getting to the bottom of the ship. Starting in the back, you can remove this cover. And then refill the fuel tanks by putting in this hose. Next up, we got the landing gears. The ones in the back are a bit bigger than the front ones, and that's because the ones in the back have to carry more weight. And I did get inspired by the landing gears of the YT1300 series, but I tried to build them in a way that they look more military and more stable. And I'm actually also pretty bad at building landing gears, but this time I really like how they turned out. So on every landing gear there are lights to light up the surroundings at night, and on the front ones I also included some small headlights to help with the landing process. Up here you can see the proton torpedo launcher. Later I will also show you the magazine of it. And these are the bottom twin laser guns, and their task was to support the reinforcement troops with cover fire. And this is one of the guns that one of the two guns that were added to the ship when Mando had it modified, because he already liked them on the Razor Crest. When firing, they need a lot of energy, which is why they have to be fed from an internal source via this hose. So on the other side it looks exactly the same, so I won't show you everything again. But we are finally back at the front, and now I will show you how the loading ramp works, and then we will head to the interior. So when you remove this part over here, you can take a bar and put it in here. Then you can switch between two gears, one for a winch, which I will show you after this, and one for the opening mechanism of the loading ramp. And now if you turn this part over here, the loading ramp will open. And by the way, this minifigure is supposed to be Mando. I don't own his figure, so I built him with my own parts. And now he can enter his ship. But normally, before the ramp would open, a TT-8L unit would show up and say, so I hope you got the little reference right here. Now I will show you the interior of the Mythosaur, starting with the front. If you remove this cover, you can take a look at what's underneath, and here there is some ribbon, and this is supposed to be a sensor. And here you can take a look at the switching mechanism. And for now I'll switch to the winch gear. And what you see here is actually the second floor. And for now I'll remove it so you can take a look at that's what is below. So here you can see the corridor, which leads to the loading ramp. And here's another view into the corridor from the front. And right here in the middle, you can see a sliding door, which can be opened. And this door was used to repel troops, but for Mando it still can be very useful in many other situations. So if you move on, you can see a ladder, and this ladder leads to the second floor, like on the Razor Crest or the Imperial Zeta class heavy cargo shuttle. And at the end of the corridor there is the carbonite freezing chamber. Now I'll show you how Mando moves a block from the freezing chamber all the way to the freighting room. This block right here is representing a bounty frozen in carbonite. And when you put the second floor back in here, you can open these two flaps, and then you have access to the corridor below. So if you take the hook of the winch next to this little storage area, you can put the rope on this pulley, and then the rope will lead down into the corridor. And now Mando can attach the carbonite block onto the hook. and then he can climb up the ladder right here. And then he can pull up the carbonite block to the second story, and then he can detach the block from the hook, and then you can transport the carbonite block into the fitting room, or you can store it right here. Now I will remove all the other panels, and then I'll show you every room one by one. So starting with this door, it separates the front section of the ship from the main body, and if you enter, it will lead you into the main hallway, which has this typical Corellian look. And then on the right side there's the fitting room, but before you enter you have to open this door first. And on the inside, as you can see, the room is almost fully loaded. Here there are a couple of tanks. Here are some supply crates. And over here there is one of the kyber crystal containers that also appeared in Rogue One. But this one I built in dark blue because I don't like them in orange color. And I think every one of you who played Star Wars The Complete Saga knows that this is a mini kit. Now that the room is empty, I can show you some more details. So these two are supposed to be some generators. And over here there's a safe, and this is very important for Mando because in here he keeps all the Beskar he got. Moving on, you can see the magazine of the proton torpedo launcher, and it can be reloaded from inside the ship by only one person, which means that if the proton torpedo launcher should run out of ammunition, the magazine could be reloaded again with new proton torpedoes from these pellets. And next to the magazine there's a control unit to supervise the proton torpedo launcher. Getting back to the hallway, it was really difficult to make the hallway look good with its tube-like shape while still being able to view inside from above. I mainly got inspired by Rich Boy J's building technique in his Millennium Falcon MOC, but I did some changes to it on my side, and then this is what I came up with, and I think it looks pretty good. Next up, we got Mando's personal armory. Here he has access to a huge variety of weapons and other equipment for all different kinds of purposes, starting with a small section of tools, followed by laser guns of all sizes, some rocket launchers, and also a mortar. This box contains a huge supply of thermal detonators, as you can see, and over here Mando has stored some replacement jetpacks in case his one would break at some point in the future, and here he also has access to a new cloak. If you move on, this is Mando's sleeping quarters, and this is his bed. And over here he also has a small TV to watch the news in the galaxy every evening, and there's also a table with a chair. Next up, you can see a hallway over here, which is leading to an escape pod, and if the ship would be about to crash, for example, up to 4 persons could enter the escape pod via an imaginary hatch on the back. And then, this is my favorite function on the ship. This docking hatch would open, and then the escape pod can be ejected. The escape pod also has an interior, so if you remove this upper part, you can take a look inside, and it's actually kept very simple. There's the control unit in the front. Here there are 4 passenger seats, and behind that there is a small storage area, and in the back there are the fuel tanks and the engines. So my idea was that this little corridor could not only be used for an escape pod, and instead Mando could also use it as a mini hangar for his speeder bike that I built for him, and it actually also perfectly fits in there. So this is his speeder bike. It was inspired by DJ's Lego Room's speeder bikes. In the front it has a little air inlet to cool the internals, and here there are the controls, and back here there are the engines. Yeah, and that's it. And this corridor can also be used as a second freighting room or as a docking room. So moving on, If you remove this tile, there's a little smuggling compartment underneath, and the crate stored in there apparently contains some diamonds. In the center of the Mythosaur, as I already explained, there's the cockpit, and because Mando is the only pilot on the ship, it was adapted for him and built in a way that he can reach everything very easily. So on this side there are all the flight controls, and this right here is a screen which shows a 3D image of the Mythosaur and all its surroundings in third-person view, which makes it much easier for Mando to fly such a big ship. And if the electronics should fail, a clear picture from all the front mirrors would come together on his screen to show him where he's flying. His seat can also be turned to the other side, so he has access to the weapon control systems. Next up, you can see the second sleeping quarters with a guest bed. And here there is a small medical station with an overview panel to show a patient's current medical condition and if Mando should be wounded, he could be operated by this Medidroid on this surgery bed. Over here there's a small storage, and here you can see that there is another door which can be opened and then leads into the prison room. And the prison room is directly next to the hyperdrive, so it can get really loud in here. And the prison room is used to transport bounties if the client doesn't want them to be frozen in carbonite, for example. So in here you got a little bed and a table with a chair, and this guy you see right here is supposed to be a wanted criminal. Now at the end of the hallway there is the living room with a typical Corellian couch, and at the moment Mando is working together with two other bounty hunters, and they are watching a hologram from their client. And over here you can see the kitchen at which Mando's household droid is cooking some stuff. And there's also a fridge which contains some spatchka apparently. And this droid over here is Mando's service droid, and it is currently serving some cookies and some spatchka. So maybe you are wondering why Mando suddenly has so many droids working on his ship, but that's due to the fact that his attitude towards droids has completely changed after his life got saved by a droid in Chapter 8 of the Mandalorian. As I told you, I will now show you the elevator of the smaller docking hatch, which is very hidden because it's actually the floor that lifts up, and it functions by just pulling it up. It doesn't reach all the way up to the hatch because there wasn't enough space anymore, but Mando could still climb out of there and then access the top of his ship. So next there's the engine room, which can also be used as a freighting room. And here you got some control panels. And here there is a treadmill. So Mando can always stay fit. And here is the hyperdrive's manual on and off switch. Now we arrived at the last room of the Mythosaur, which can be entered if you walk through this door right here, next to the couch. And it's actually a bathroom, which has a toilet over here. And it also has a shower. And in the corner right here, there's also a sink with a little towel stand. So finally, I hope that you liked my mock. I also want to excuse for all the cuts in the video, but they were needed because I'm really not good at speaking English that fluently. But I am very interested in what you think about the Mythosaur, so feel free to leave a comment down below. And thanks for watching and see you next time.